What is up, you guys? This is All Day Day 1 on the PS4, and I'm going to be giving you another Defiance 2050 video. This video is going to be my thoughts and review for the current state of this game, so just like my recent reviews for other games, I'm going to go over each individual topic. So the things I'll be talking about will be things like graphics and textures, content and endgame, mechanics such as movement and gameplay, or gunplay mechanics, the abilities and gear, RNG and drop rates, lag and bugs, progression, and then enemies. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that like and sub, as I'll be going over different games and reviews for a lot of newer games and possibly older games. So first things first is graphics. So graphics is a pretty important part of our current state of gaming, whether it's an MMORPG, single player, open world, story driven, or sandbox game. They normally will have good quality graphics because that's just what the majority of gamers are looking for now. With Defiance 2050, the graphics at best is subpar. Lighting is the same as it was on the original Defiance. Maybe it's a bit brighter in some areas and dark in others, but overall there isn't much of a noticeable difference. Graphics are fairly noticeable. The textures of this version of Defiance does look slightly better than the original. But for a game that is on a new engine and remade in 2018, we should really be expecting it to be at the very least half of what games like Warframe look like. Which in fact, Warframe is a free-to-play game as well, but it looks like a $60 game. So to me, no, Defiance 2050 doesn't necessarily need to look exactly like Warframe graphically, but it could have definitely been polished a little bit better. Next up, we have content and endgame. For those of you who play Defiance 2050 and have done pretty much everything that has been offered, you're probably thinking, what content, what endgame? Those are literally the exact thoughts that come to mind for many players, even the players that, haven't necessarily done everything. The content in the game in general is fun because it ranges from open world events that everyone can participate in, doing the storyline as well as side missions, PvP, even though the shield exploit is what's killing it for most players, and you also have co-op maps. It is repetitive, but to me the repetition for this certain content is fairly fun. It's not bad. It's a fun experience. Now, endgame content, that's pretty much non-existent because there really isn't any endgame. To me, endgame content is for players who reach a really high level. So in this case, 4,000 power is high to me. Yeah, so 4,000 power is pretty high to me, being, 1,000 power away from the level cap. So this could technically qualify for an endgame content. The tier 4 and tier 5 co-ops are supposedly, I guess you could call them endgame content, but to me, they don't really feel like an endgame, and they also don't really reward you as if it was supposed to be endgame. Sure, you do have a higher chance of getting legendaries and a really high chance of getting purples, but I mean, to me, those just don't really feel as rewarding. But I am hoping that there will someday or sometime there will be an update that will allow higher level players to do real endgame content that would also reward well for their effort. Now we're on mechanics such as movement and gunplay. I have heard many people complain about running in this game looking very unrealistic as well as crouching. For me, I don't really mind the movement because that's not what I'm here for. For most MMORPG style games, I'm not really paying attention to how realistic or unrealistic the movement looks. If the movement feels fluid to me, then I'll take it because a lot of times you can have a nice looking running animation, but the movement can feel very wonky, very heavy, and I just wouldn't really like that. Now, driving in this game definitely needs some tweaking. Not necessarily the open world driving, but the races. Because it feels like when you're driving during the races or when you're doing the races, it feels like you're driving a log, and it feels like it takes 5 years just to turn. And when you do turn, when you power slide, you over power slide, so you kind of have to repeatedly tap the power slide button rather than just holding it and I guess budge little by little with your thumbstick to move left or right without messing up or missing a turn or crashing into anything, etc., etc. Aside from that, movement feels fine to me. Like just running around and dodging and all that, it feels perfectly fine to me. Gunplay in this game is kind of fine where it's at, but it can also be worked on. Like, for example, sniping in this game, to me it doesn't feel fluid. It feels like when I'm trying to snipe, when I'm scoping in, the scope stops sometimes, or it just I just overlook the enemy, I guess. I don't know exactly the word for it, but using a scope on a sniper just doesn't feel right. But, you know, when you're not using a scope, it doesn't feel too bad, whether you're free aiming or auto aiming. I do enjoy this game mainly because of the gunplay, plus the open world events, as well as many other people do. So I think that itself kind of explains, or that pretty much explains itself, or speaks for itself. Next up is your abilities and gear. So the way your abilities work now is completely different than the original Defiance, which many people hated this idea, some didn't care, and others kind of liked the idea. I am one of those people who did hate the idea at first, but later I didn't really care, I got used to it. So the reason why I don't mind is because I like having a class system in a game. It gives people a role to play, although this game doesn't really do well with the roles. For example, the Guardian doesn't it can't tank, even though it has the tanking capabilities. Combat medic, it's not great for healing, but it has a healing bot. So you have all of these, but you know what I think they should have done was they should have added more perks rather than only 3 perks in each tree with 2 abilities to pick from out of out of the 3 abilities, the 3 ability trees. I think a lot of the perks just in general for each class are pretty much useless. So I think what the perks honestly should have done is they should have kind of, I guess, support the abilities itself. That would have, or support other perks, you know, just making it to where this class can really shine as, for example, combat medic could shine as a combat medic, could shine as a medic, or a guardian could shine as a tank with different perks. Pretty much, I guess, showing that it's tank, making it more durable, making it more tanky, or something like that. I don't know. The gear in this game is also pretty good with the way the tier system works. You have white being the lowest and orange yellows being the highest tier. And then you have higher tier items, or, you know, the higher tier items are normally obtained from being higher leveled. Keep in mind though, power level doesn't affect how well you play in PvP. Only for PvE, power does help you due to having higher and stronger mods, bonuses, and weapon bonuses. You won't really notice that much of a difference at a low power range, but from like 1 to 2,000 power, you really won't notice a difference, unfortunately. But once you do get to around 4 to 5,000 power, you'll notice a major difference. Alright, now, let's talk about RNG and drop rates. And yes, we're going to two kind of different things. So RNG, also known as randomly number generated, is a key point to most RPGs, let alone MMORPGs. With games like Borderlands or Diablo 3, where the game pretty much showers you in loot for killing enemies and completing certain content or killing bosses or elites. And you also have other games like Terra, where RNG seems to be extremely low. Defiance 2050 is sort of closer to Terra's RNG. You won't always get prototypes, but you will be able to rack up thousands upon thousands of kills if you're going for pursuits. Which I suppose if you do care about that, then it's cool. But RNG seems very, very, very low. For prototypes, in the open world, I believe it's around like 0.8 or 0.5% drop rate chance per enemy, and then in co-op it's a 2% drop rate chance, which again is very low considering the fact that it's per enemy. And honestly, I don't really like the concept of a low percentage for RNG. I prefer the game to guarantee you a drop if you hadn't gotten one within at least 10 to 20,000 kills of that specific enemy type. There are a few players in the game who have gotten over 50 to 60,000 kills and have not gotten a single prototype that they were looking for, which to me is a bit off-putting. I'm not against farming, but I am against farming for nothing and not really progressing much, which we will go into a little bit, or get into a little bit with progression. The developers also have stated that the higher power level you are, the higher chances you have for prototypes and legendaries. From my own experience, being at 5,000 power, they're kind of right and wrong. I haven't really seen any prototypes since, or I just haven't seen any prototypes since my early 3000s or late 2000 powers. But legendaries do drop more frequently, but that's from higher ranked faction vendors at rank 6, 7, and 8. And they also drop more often from tier 5 co-op chests. Now, for drop rates in this game, it is also very low. I'm not talking about RNG really, but rather just drops in general from enemy kills. When you look at games like Diablo 3 and Borderlands, even Division and Destiny, people enjoy these games not only because gameplay is fun, but because you can also easily obtain loot. Am I saying they should drop legendaries all the time or have a really high chance of dropping legendaries? Not exactly. I think that would, or what would keep players wanting to play more of, I guess, looter shooter type of games, is either you increase drop rates, so make it to where when you kill at least 10 enemies or something, or 5 to 10 enemies, you're going to get a drop. Whether it's a blue item, purple item, orange, whatever, you're gonna get a drop. But you either increase that or you increase RNG, so you can keep the drop rate where it's at, where you don't get as many drops as often, but you need to increase the RNG so that way people feel more rewarded. And not only that, but the drops you get are not even just drops, but from chests sometimes, or wherever else, or rewards. The power level that they drop at is normally less. Most nine times out of 10, they're going to be less power than you. Around 50 power or even 10 power is normally going to be less, unfortunately. So I think you could either increase the RNG of higher tier items or the power, either or, you know, that's just what I think though. If they want to keep more players around, I would highly recommend, you know, either increasing drop rates or RNG. But again, that's just me. Up next is lag, bugs, and exploits. So every online game will have some sort of lag issue, bug issue, or exploits. And I think it's safe to say Defiance 2050 does have all three issues. Lag isn't anywhere near as bad as it was on the original Defiance, as well as the early release for a couple weeks for Defiance 2050. So I do applaud the developers on fixing the major lag and crash issues right away. Now with the bug issues, a lot of the same bugs were also from the original Defiance, which is unfortunate but isn't necessarily game breaking except for the random art key loss, because that one you have to pay for, or you have to wait every other day and once a day in order to get an art key. Aside from that, pursuit bugs and the contract bugs are annoying as well, but it's not game breaking because it doesn't hurt your gameplay. All it does is it just annoys you. And I mean, I've had a few pursuits that I needed completed, but I couldn't get it completed because it just wasn't available or whatever. For example, my shotgun pursuit, I'm at level 41 in my shotgun, and I still haven't gotten the level 25 pursuit. So yeah, it is annoying. But like I said, it's not making the game broken to where it's unplayable, which I guess could be fine, in other words. But the exploits that does go around happens in all online games. And I'm not saying it's good for people to exploit, but it should generally make developers want to fix it as soon as possible. But it seems like with this development team, they kind of just put it on the back burner because they have stated they'd fix these exploits, and this was a while back they said this. And not just exploits, but broken weapons as well, like the Bonesaw and Gore Auger. They said that they were going to fix these a while back, as well as Motherload. I think they said that they were going to fix it this month, but apparently it's not going to be fixed this month. It's going to be fixed, or not this month, last month, but it will be fixed. Apparently it's going to be fixed this month within a couple weeks. So, I mean, here's hoping. But, yeah, they did, like I said, they did claim to have them fixed before the big update, so we can only hope they stick to their word and not push the fix any further. So the next thing is progression. I did talk a little bit about progression earlier, but the way it works is you need power in order to gain power, meaning you need to enhance your gear, sometimes purchase new gear, open chests for stronger gear, and most likely just get lucky. Progression is quite fast from when you start to around 2000 power. After that, that's when the grind pretty much starts. And it's not a bad grind until you feel like everything that's dropping is less than what you need, which will happen a lot. Many players have been stuck for a few days or even a few weeks. And unfortunately, this meant a lot of players decided to purchase keys. And I don't just mean like a couple keys, I meant a lot of keys. Which means in a sense it will come to microtransaction if you're looking for a normal pace progression. If you don't mind the slower pace progression, then I think you'll be fine without really having to spend a dime. The good thing about enhancing your gear though is you don't need to rely on RNG for that, because all you need is salvage, which is incredibly easy to farm and pretty fun as well. Especially if you're running with other players or guild members or just friends or whoever. Which to me I think was a very strong point of this game, not having to rely on RNG for just really upgrading anything. Because honestly, that's what really annoyed me with other MMO type of games, mainly like Terra. So the last thing I'll be talking about is the enemies. So now the enemies in this game isn't really too bad once you kind of know how they work, what enemies hit hard, and what enemies don't hit as hard, which ones have low health, etc. Enemies to me are pretty well balanced for the game, or for the most part, except quantum archers, since they will one-shot you no matter what. I mean, from what I tested actually, I wasn't really getting one-shotted by these quantum archers anymore, but normally they do, so I think it's just based off power for some, or maybe, I don't know. But normally unless you're a guardian with second life or using the shield exploit, but knowing that quantum archers one-shot, that should generally be the #1 priority for most players to kill those archers. Elites aren't so bad when you know how to fight them and know their attacks. For example, if we're fighting a bulwark, you know their weak spot is their missiles, but you know that when their missiles are open, they're gonna shoot you with rockets. So you kind of have to be aware, kind of stand near cover, so when they do shoot you with rockets, you hide behind cover. It's pretty simple. But for some players, it can still be quite a struggle. The only enemies I really have a problem with really are the smaller enemies and the ones who rush and zigzag a lot. Not that they're hard or anything, but with the wonky controls of aiming sometimes, it makes it a little too hard to hit these certain enemies. But honestly, it's just a minor issue for me. Nothing major, and it doesn't really bother me too much. Now, the only two bosses that are unbalanced are both the War Master and Motherload. Motherload because, well, I mean, it takes 10 years just to pop one of his pimples, and War Master, he can easily be one-shotted by cluster bombs before he even spawns out of his little eggshell. And I mean, that's coming from someone who's a higher level player. I don't know if cluster bombs would work for other players that aren't as high. But, you know, the developers do know about those specific bosses, so hopefully we can see improvements on them. Aside from all that, though, I think the enemies are all pretty well balanced. Anyways, that's pretty much it with this video. I know it may have been a bit long, a little longer than expected, but you know, I just wanted to share my thoughts on the current state of the game and really do hope it gets better. So here's to being optimistic, right? If you did enjoy this video, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your favorite Arcana or your pet. It doesn't matter. If you have any questions or concerns, you know, just go ahead and let me know down in the comment section. If there's things you agree with or you want to add on, or you things you don't agree with, just let me know as well. I'd like to see and hear other people's thoughts. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is all Day 1 on the PS4. Have a good day, good night, and peace.